Slide 1. The Atmosphere and Winds, Topic 08A, Part 1, Winds. The Ocean and the Atmosphere. We need to learn about the atmosphere, because the ocean and atmosphere are tightly interconnected with one another. You cannot understand what is happening in one without understanding what is happening in the other. For example, the atmosphere's winds push water around, causing ocean currents and waves. Ocean currents shift around the warm and cold water that produces winds, and ocean water evaporates, giving the atmosphere the moisture needed to produce weather like storms and rain. Slide 2. Convection cells. The major winds that blow over the surface of the ocean are one part of a phenomenon called a convection cell. A convection cell is a fluid like air or water circulating due to differences in density. Sunlight travels through the atmosphere, warming the surface of the earth, both the land and the ocean. Some places become warmer than others, though. The air above warmer places is warmed by the earth below them, while the air above cooler places is cooled by the earth below them, and this imbalance in temperature is what sets the air in motion. The warmer, lower density air rises over the warm spot, and the cooler, higher density air sinks over the cold spot. Remember, warming air makes its molecules move faster. This helps the warm air molecules push outwards, push aside the neighboring air molecules, allowing them to spread and thus lowering the density of the air. The opposite happens to cold air molecules. At the surface, cold air slides away from the cold place, lifting up the warm air due to the cold air's higher density. The air moving right in the picture on the slide is the surface winds. This air is moving to the warm spot to replace the rising air. In other words, the cold air is moving to the warm spot to fill in the empty space left behind by the warm, rising air. In addition, air is pushed away from the cold spot by the cool, sinking air. The cold, sinking air shoves the air already at the cold spot out of the way. The warm, rising air pushes aside the air that was above it, moving it towards the cold place to replace air that is sinking there. The air moving left in the picture on the slide is the high-altitude winds. This air is moving to the cold spot to fill in the empty space left behind by the cold, sinking air, and is pushed away from the warm spot by the warm, rising air. Overall, the air ends up moving in one big circle or loop. This is not the end of the story. The cold air will be warmed by the warm place on the surface of the earth, and the process will repeat again. And again. And again. The air moving horizontally is what we call wind. The major winds of the world are all part of convection cells. Thus, you have now learned how the major winds of the world are created. Slide 3. Sea breezes and land breezes. You might be wondering why some places on the earth become warmer than others. A classic example is sea breeze. A sea breeze results from the difference in the heat capacity of the land and water. See Unit 4A-3 for more information about heat capacity. Both the land and ocean are warmed by the sun, but the land becomes warmer than the water owing to its lower heat capacity. When water is heated, its temperature only goes up a little bit. When land is heated, its temperature goes up a lot more than water's temperature. The air over the land and water is warmed by both the ocean and the land, but the land is a lot warmer than the ocean, so the air above the land is a lot warmer than the air above the ocean and thus has a lower density than the air above the ocean. Due to its lower density, it is the air over the land that rises, and cooler air from the ocean comes in to replace it. The cooler air coming from the ocean is the sea breeze. Slide 4. The opposite happens at night. Both the land and ocean radiate heat into space, but when the land gives up heat, its temperature drops a lot more than water due to its lower heat capacity, so the land becomes colder than the ocean. The air over the ocean is not warm, but it is warmer than the cold air over the land. Thus, the not as cold air over the ocean has a lower density than the air over the land, so the air over the ocean rises, and colder air from the land moves out to the ocean to replace it. The air moving from the land to the ocean is the land breeze. Notice that the ocean warms up too during the day in the picture above. The land is warmer, so the air over the land has a lower density than the air over the ocean. Similarly, both the land and ocean cool down at night, but the land gets colder and it is the relatively warmer air over the ocean that has a lower density. Technically, it is not warm air that rises. The lowest density air at the surface of the Earth rises. In other words, it is the warmer air that rises. Of course, this assumes that the only difference between the air in the two places is the temperature of the air. Slide 5. One more thing. Notice the sea breeze is a wind which comes from the ocean, and a land breeze is a wind that comes from the land. Winds and currents are often named based upon where they come from, not where they are going to. This can lead to lots of confusion if you are not aware of it. Slide 6. What the global wind pattern would look like if the Earth did not rotate. The goal of this entire unit is for you to understand the overall motion of the atmosphere, the pattern, and its causes. Given what we have learned about convection cells, what should we expect? Think about it. Where is air warmer, at the equator or the poles? Clearly, air is warmer at the equator. Therefore, air rises at the equator and sinks at the poles, and the cool air from the poles will slide to the equator to replace the air rising at the equator. In other words, surface winds tend to blow away from the poles and towards the equator. The picture on the slide is two pictures in one, in a way. The view is from outer space above the equator. The green arrows within the globe are giving you a bird's eye view of the winds that are blowing over the surface of the Earth. The green arrows show the air over the ocean moving from the poles to the equator. At the surface of the Earth, the air is moving south in the northern hemisphere, and air is moving north in the southern hemisphere. The red, green, and blue arrows on the side of the globe show you what the air is doing vertically as well as horizontally. In other words, it shows the convection cells in the atmosphere. The air is rising up at the equator, red arrow, moving towards the poles, green arrows, sinking down at the poles, blue arrows, and moving towards the equator near the surface of the Earth, green arrows. Note that the red dotted arrow at the equator represents air moving up, and the blue dotted arrows at the poles represent air moving down. Up means away from the surface of the Earth, and down means towards the surface of the Earth. Up does not mean towards the top of the page, and down does not mean towards the bottom of the page. Similarly, north means towards the North Pole, and south means towards the South Pole. It would be lovely if this were the end of the story. Sadly, the major winds are a bit more complex than those shown in the picture on the slide. This picture shows how the winds would blow if the Earth did not rotate, and yet sunlight was distributed evenly at each latitude. In other words, the picture on the slide is not the global wind pattern. However, it is a good starting point for understanding the more complex global wind pattern diagram, and illustrates one essential idea to remember: at the surface of the Earth, air tries to move from the cold poles towards the warm equator. Slide 7. The Coriolis effect. As you probably know, the Earth is not stationary. The Earth is rotating, spinning, turning, around its axis once per day. This leads to a phenomenon known as the Coriolis effect. Objects traveling over the Earth bend off course. I will not ask you to explain how the Coriolis effect works in detail, but I do expect you to know about it and to be able to apply a few ideas about how it works. That being said, I will now attempt to explain why there is a Coriolis effect. There are several ways to think about or explain the Coriolis effect. I like to simply say that moving objects go straight forward while the Earth is turning beneath them. As the Earth turns, the directions north, east, south, and west change, see the picture on the slide, but moving objects continue going in their original direction. In other words, an object moving north continues to move towards the old north, not the new north that results from the Earth's rotation. To you and me and other objects standing still on the Earth, it looks like nothing has changed except the direction of the moving objects, because everything around us travels with us. Moving objects do not bend off course because they are changing direction, but because we in our point of view, the northeast-southwest arrows, are moving with the rotating Earth. Slide 8. At this point your brain may be feeling a little dizzy from all this talk of the Earth's rotation and directions changing and not changing. As I said before, I will not ask you to explain how the Coriolis effect works in detail. I want you to know that the Coriolis effect is caused by the rotation of the Earth, and I expect you to know about it and to be able to apply a few ideas about how it works. Specifically, objects bend off course to the right of the direction in which they are moving in the northern hemisphere. Objects bend off course to the left of the direction in which they are moving in the southern hemisphere. The Coriolis effect is stronger near the poles, and weaker near the equator. You may wonder why winds, currents, and other things turn one way in one hemisphere and the other way in the other hemisphere. The short answer is they don't. As you can see from the picture on the slide, the winds, green arrows, in this example turn towards the west. They only appear to be doing something different in each hemisphere, because the person's right in the northern hemisphere is the other person's left in the southern hemisphere, since they are upside down relative to one another. In short, suppose you watch a ball move to your right. If you stand on your head, and keep facing the same way, your right and left reverse, and you now see the ball move to your left. But the ball is still moving in the same direction it was before. In addition to knowing that objects turn to the right of their direction of motion in the northern hemisphere and left of their direction of motion in the southern hemisphere, you also need to know that the Coriolis effect is stronger near the poles and weaker near the equator. Here is the easy way to remember it: the equator is not in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, so objects at the equator do not turn to their right or left and therefore there is no Coriolis effect. The equator is the place where the Coriolis effect switches from having things turn right to having things turn left, or vice versa. Slide 9. The Coriolis effect is only significant for objects that travel a large distance, or a long time, over the surface of the Earth. Therefore the Coriolis effect is not an important factor in everyday situations. In other words, the Coriolis effect does not cause curveballs in baseball or the direction that water goes down your sink or toilet. To achieve pinpoint accuracy, our military needs to take the Coriolis effect into account when they fire shells or missiles more than a mile. Airplane pilots who fail to adjust for the Coriolis effect end up in the wrong city. Note that the Coriolis effect does not cause winds, just like it does not cause a missile or airplane to move. The Coriolis effect only changes the direction in which something is moving. The Coriolis effect does not change its speed. If you are not sure what does cause the winds, review the section on convection cells at the beginning of this unit. Slide 10. The bird's eye view maps on the slide show the directions that the winds bend under the influence of the Coriolis effect in the northern hemisphere. You will be asked to determine the direction that winds and currents turn due to the Coriolis effect on quizzes and other assignments in this class. In other words, you will be given arrows like the green ones and be asked to draw the black ones. To get questions like these correct every time, rotate or turn the map so that the wind, the green arrow, is pointing away from you. Then your right and the wind's right will be the same, and you can draw an arrow going to the right of the green arrow. Slide 11. Here is another strategy: make copies of the index cards below. Now, take your index card or piece of paper and rotate it so that the green arrow points in the same direction as the wind or current you are given. The black arrow on your index card will show you the direction it will turn. For example, the picture on the right side of the slide shows me holding the northern hemisphere index card next to the wind going east, and the black arrow on the card tells me that the wind will turn towards the south. Notice that I have focused on the northern hemisphere. You will need to remember to draw an arrow going the other direction, to the left, for southern hemisphere winds and currents, or make a separate index card for the southern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere index card is shown on the left of the slide. Slide 12. The global wind pattern. As the air tries to move from the poles to the equator, it is bent off course towards the west. In the northern hemisphere the air moves south, and turns to its right, west. In the southern hemisphere, the air moves north, and turns to its left, west. The problem is that the farther the air travels, the more it turns off course and towards the west. At some point, the air is no longer heading north or south, and therefore it cannot make any more progress towards the equator. Instead, the air rises up at its current latitude. The air at 60 degrees north and south is not warm. Canada is at 60 degrees north, but it is warmer than the air at the poles, so its density is low enough to rise at this latitude. Similarly, after air rises at the equator, it moves north towards the poles, cooling down as it travels. The air is bent towards the east by the Coriolis effect, and at 30 degrees north and south, the air cannot move any farther towards the poles. The air at 30 degrees north and south is not cold. Southern California is at 34 degrees north, but it is colder than the air at the equator, so its density is high enough for it sink at these latitudes. Remember that the dotted arrows show air rising and sinking, air going towards or away from the surface of the Earth. Slide 13. Air is always pushed away from the place where it sinks and towards the place where it rises. Between 30 degrees north and 60 degrees north, the air is forced to move in another convection cell by the sinking air at 30 degrees north and the rising air at 60 degrees north. The same thing happens between 30 degrees south and 60 degrees south. Notice that these middle convection cells are the reverse of the convection cells by the equator and the poles. In other words, they rotate in the opposite direction. The air does not want to move in this direction due to its density. Instead, it is forced to do so by the convection cells on either side. Names have been given to the winds that blow at each range of latitudes. For example, the winds between the equator and 30 degrees north are called the northeast trade winds. The winds between the equator and 30 degrees south are called the southeast trade winds. The key point to take away from the global wind pattern map is that the winds between the equator and 30 degrees north go southwest most of the time. The winds between the equator and 30 degrees south go northwest most of the time. We call these latitudes at which the winds mostly go in the same direction wind belts. A belt wraps around your body. Each wind belt wraps around the Earth. I will sometimes ask you what direction the wind is at a given latitude. I expect you to go to the global wind map to answer the question. For example, if I were to ask you what the direction of the winds are at 50 degrees north, I expect you to look at the global wind map. Note that 50 degrees north is between 30 degrees north and 60 degrees north, so it is in the wind belt we call the westerlies in the northern hemisphere. The westerlies go northeast. So, the winds at 50 degrees north go northeast. Reminder, winds and currents are often named for the direction that they come from, not the direction that they are going to, so the westerlies come from the west and blow towards the east. How to memorize the global wind pattern? You can memorize the global wind pattern map. I suggest that you memorize the directions of the trade winds. Both trade winds blow towards the equator and towards the west. This should not be too hard to remember, because the equator is the warmest place in the world. The air on the equator rises, so the nearby air moves toward the equator to replace the rising air. As the air moves towards the equator, it is bent off course by the Coriolis effect. In the northern hemisphere the air moving south goes to its right, and the air in the southern hemisphere the air moving north turns to its left. In both cases, the air turns towards the west. Once you have the trade winds memorized, the other winds are a piece of cake. The westerlies are the opposites of the trade winds, and the polar easterlies are the opposites of the westerlies. In other words, the polar easterlies go in the same directions as the trade winds. The global wind pattern map is an oversimplification. The global wind pattern map is a gross oversimplification of the winds. Continents and their mountains as well as vast sheets of ice distort the pattern. The winds shift with the seasons as the warmest spot on the Earth shifts north and south of the equator and the land becomes warmer or cooler than the ocean. All this complexity contributes to the weather patterns that we experience every day. In short, the winds are not as steady as you might think from the global wind pattern map. That being said, the map does show what the winds are usually like or most likely to be like. Slide 14. A deeper look at the Coriolis effect. This last section in the unit contains more information and more detailed information about the causes of the Coriolis effect. You will not be tested on the material that follows. The more accurate explanation for the Coriolis effect requires you to note that objects at different latitudes on the Earth are moving at different speeds. The radius of the Earth, the distance from the center of the Earth to its surface, is about 6,370 kilometers, about 4,000 miles. If you are at the equator, you are traveling a distance of 2 times pi times 4,000 miles in a single day, 24 hours, so your average speed is about 8,000 pi miles divided by 24 hours equals 1,047 miles per hour, so about 1,000 miles per hour. The speed drops to about 865 miles per hour at 30 degrees north, and 500 miles per hour at 60 degrees north. At the North Pole, your speed is zero, because you are not traveling anywhere. Objects have momentum equal to their current latitude. If an object moves over the surface of the Earth and changes latitude, it is too fast or slow for its new latitude, causing it to get ahead or behind other objects at its new latitude. For example, if a wind starts at the equator and moves north, it is going too fast for its new latitude. The sun rises in the east, so the Earth must be turning towards the east. Since the Earth rotates towards the east, the wind moving north away from the equator will be moving both north and too fast to the east for its new latitude, so the wind ends up going both north and east, not just north. A wind starting out at the North Pole moving south will be too slow for its new latitude, so it falls behind the Earth and things on the ground. It travels to the east less than everything at its new latitudes, which means it drifts west relative to them. Thus, a wind moving south from the North Pole ends up going both south and west. You might be wondering why we do not feel how fast we are moving as the Earth rotates. What we actually feel when we travel fast is acceleration, not speed. We can tell we are traveling fast on a horse or ship, because the faster the speed, the more we get bumped around by our transportation. However, if an object is traveling smoothly, there is not any difference between the feeling of standing still and moving smoothly. When we fly on an airplane today, we can verify this for ourselves. Is there really much difference between moving at 500 miles per hour in an airplane and standing still? If we close our eyes, we can only tell that we are moving if the ride is bumpy, like turbulence, and if we cannot hear the plane's engines. The Earth rotates very smoothly and objects around us, including the air, move with us. This is why we do not notice that we are traveling at hundreds of miles per hour at this very moment as the Earth turns and we go with it. Recall that we said earlier that the Coriolis effect is stronger near the poles and weaker near the equator. Notice that the difference in speed of the Earth between the equator and nearby latitudes is not as great near the equator. For example, the speed difference between the equator and 30 degrees north is about 135 miles per hour, while the speed difference between 60 degrees north and the North Pole is about 500 miles per hour. Since the Coriolis effect is caused by the difference in speed when objects move from the latitude to another latitude and become too fast or slow for the new latitudes, a smaller speed difference means the object more closely matches the speed of its new latitude and does not get as far ahead or fall as much behind. In other words, it experiences less of a Coriolis effect.